The airplane touched down smoothly at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, just as the evening sky began turning orange. Amara Okafor stared quietly through the window as Lagos stretched endlessly beneath her. The city lights glittered like gold in the distance, alive with movement, noise, and chaos. Yellow buses moved like restless insects along crowded roads, while the familiar haze of the city floated beneath the setting sun. Home. After 7 years in the abode, United States, she was finally back. The other passengers hurried to stand and grab their bags, but Amara remained seated for a moment longer. Her fingers tightened slightly around the strap of her handbag. Her stomach twisted nervously. Returning home should have made her happy. Instead, it made her anxious. A flight attendant smiled politely at her. "Ma'am." Amara blinked quickly. "Oh, sorry." She stood slowly and reached for her carry-on luggage. As she stepped into the aisle, she noticed two women ahead of her, whispering to each other, while glancing backward. One of them laughed softly. Amara immediately looked away. Even after all these years, she still recognized that look. The look people gave her. Because of her weight, it had followed her entire life. Back in secondary school, classmates called her names like Big Mama and Elephant. During family parties, aunties would pinch her cheeks and say things like, "This girl eats too much. Who will marry her? She's pretty, but this weight is too much." Even when she moved abroad for university, the comments never completely stopped. Americans were simply more polite about it. Instead of insulting her openly, they gave fake sympathetic smiles or offered unsolicited diet advice. "You have such a beautiful face. You'd be stunning if you lost weight." Every compliment somehow became an insult. Amara learned to pretend it didn't hurt, but it always did. By the time she exited the airport, the humid Lagos air wrapped around her instantly. The noise hit her next. Car horns shouting drivers, street vendors yelling, prices, the scent of roasted corn, fuel, and rain-soaked asphalt mixed together in the air. And waiting directly outside the VIP terminal was a convoy of black luxury SUVs. Her father's One of the guards immediately rushed forward. "Welcome back, madam." Amara forced a smile. "Thank you." Another man opened the back door for her respectfully. As she entered the car, she finally removed her sunglasses and leaned her head against the seat tiredly. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Chief has been counting the hours until your arrival." That made her smile genuinely. Her father had always loved her fiercely. Chief Emmanuel Okafor was one of the wealthiest businessmen in Nigeria. Newspapers called him the Lion of Lagos. His company, Okafor Global Holdings, controlled massive businesses across the country: oil servicing, hotels, transportation, real estate, and construction. Powerful politicians respected him. Foreign investors chased him. But to Amara, he was simply daddy, the only person who had never made her feel ashamed of herself. The convoy drove through Lagos traffic smoothly, while police escorts cleared the road ahead. People on the roadside paused to stare at the expensive vehicles passing by. Amara watched silently through the tinted window. She had missed Lagos. The loudness, the energy, the life. America had given her education, experience, and independence. But it had also given her loneliness. Most nights abroad, she spent time alone in her apartment watching movies while her classmates attended parties or dates. There had been men, of course, but many of them seemed interested in her father's money once they discovered who she was. Others treated her like some secret option, good enough to flirt with privately but not publicly. After a while, Amara stopped trying. Books became safer than people. Work became easier than relationships. The convoy finally entered Banana Island, where enormous mansions lined quiet streets hidden behind high gates and armed security. Minutes later, the car stopped in front of the Okafor estate. The mansion stood proudly against the evening sky like a palace. Warm lights glowed from the windows. Fountains sparkled near the entrance. As soon as Amara stepped out of the vehicle, the front doors opened. Amara. Her father's deep voice echoed warmly. She smiled instantly. Daddy. Chief Emmanuel Okafor walked toward her with open arms. Despite being in his 60s, he still carried himself with strength and authority. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and his white traditional outfit looked perfectly pressed. But the moment he hugged his daughter, he became less of a billionaire and more of a relieved father. My princess is finally home. Amara laughed softly as he kissed her forehead. I missed you too. He held her shoulders and looked at her carefully. You look tired. I survived 11 hours in economy class because somebody refused to send private jet. Chief Okafor laughed loudly. You wanted a normal life experience. Well, I regret it already. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder as they walked inside together. Servants lined up respectfully. Welcome home, madam. The familiar smell of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the mansion. Everything looked exactly the same, yet somehow Amara felt different. Dinner was already prepared in the enormous dining room downstairs. Plates of steaming, rice-grilled fish plantain, and soup covered the long table. Chief Okafor dismissed the servants so they could eat privately. For the first few minutes they simply talked and laughed naturally. He asked about America. She asked about Lagos. He complained about Nigerian politicians. She teased him about becoming old. For the first time in months, Amara felt relaxed. Then her father suddenly became serious. There's something important we need to discuss. Amara looked up immediately. What is it? Chief Okafor dropped his fork carefully. I'm ready to step back from the company. Amara froze. What I've spent 40 years building Okafor Global Holdings. Besides, I'm getting older. You're not old. I am old enough to start thinking about legacy. Amara's appetite disappeared instantly. Her father continued calmly. You're brilliant, Amara. Your professors praised you constantly. Your business reports impressed international investors. You understand modern business systems better than most executives twice your age. She stared at him silently. And because of that, he said softly, I want you to take over the company. The words hung heavily in the room. Amara blinked slowly. Me? Yes. Her heart began pounding. No, Daddy. Why not? She looked down immediately. Because they won't respect me. The words stayed trapped in her throat. Instead, she whispered, there are more experienced people. None that I trust. But you are my daughter. He interrupted firmly. And you are capable. Amara swallowed hard. Deep down, she had always known this day would come. She was the only heir to one of the biggest companies in Nigeria. But knowing it someday would happen felt very different from hearing it spoken aloud. Her father leaned back slightly. What are you afraid of? Amara hesitated. Then she laughed bitterly. You really want me to answer that? Yes. She stared at the table for a long moment. When people look at me, she began quietly, they don't see intelligence first. Chief Okafor's expression softened immediately. Amara, they see my weight. Silence filled the room. She forced herself to continue. I know how people talk, Daddy. I've heard it my entire life. Nobody's opinion matters. It matters when those people work for me. Her father sighed heavily. You think being overweight makes you weak? No, she looked up sadly. But society does. Chief Okafor became quiet, because unfortunately she wasn't entirely wrong. Nigeria's corporate world could be brutal, especially toward women, and people judged appearances quickly. After a long silence, Amara suddenly asked, "Can I ask you something? Anything. If I'm going to lead the company someday, I want to understand it properly. You already studied business. I mean the people." Her father frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Amara leaned forward slowly. "I want to know how staff are treated when nobody important is watching." Chief Okafor looked confused. "You think your managers mistreat workers? I don't know. And how exactly do you plan to find out?" A strange excitement suddenly sparkled in Amara's eyes. She sat up straighter. "I'll work there myself." Her father blinked, as what an ordinary staff. Chief Okafor burst into laughter instantly. "You? Yes. My daughter has never washed even one plate in this house." Amara rolled her eyes. "That's because you spoil me." "I do not spoil you. You literally have 3 cooks." He laughed again. Then slowly his amusement faded as he realized she was serious. "You truly mean this?" "Yes. You want to enter my company undercover?" Amara nodded confidently now. "I want to see the truth." Chief Okafor stared at his daughter for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled proudly. "That sounds exactly like your mother." Amara's chest tightened softly at the mention of her late mother. Her mother had been kind, fearless, and stubborn in the best way. "You really think this is necessary?" he asked. "Yes. What role would you even play?" Amara smiled mischievously. "The lowest one possible." Her father narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "What are you planning?" She leaned back confidently. "A janitor." Chief Okafor nearly choked on his drink. A what? Amara burst into laughter. "Nobody notices janitors, Daddy. People reveal their true character around workers they think are invisible. That is ridiculous. It's smart. It's dangerous. It's temporary." He shook his head slowly. "You are seriously telling me that the future CEO of Okafor Global Holdings wants to clean floors?" Amara grinned. "Exactly." For several seconds, Chief Okafor simply stared at her. Then finally he laughed helplessly. "You are completely insane. I got it from you." The old billionaire smiled warmly, and for the first time since mentioning the company, Amara felt something unexpected: excitement. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. Not luxury, not protection, not another life where everyone bowed because of her father's money. She wanted truth, even if it hurt. Little did Amara know that decision was about to change her entire life forever. The transformation began at exactly 6:00 on Monday morning. Amara stood in front of the massive mirror inside her bedroom, staring at someone she barely recognized. Gone were the elegant dresses and expensive heels. Gone was the flawless makeup and polished billionaire image. Instead, she wore a faded blue janitor uniform that hung loosely around her body. A plain black scarf covered most of her thick curly hair, and her face was bare, except for a little powder to dull her natural glow. Even her posture looked different: smaller, quieter, invisible. Amara adjusted the oversized uniform nervously. "I look ridiculous." Her father, sitting nearby with a newspaper, glanced up and nearly burst into laughter again. "You look like you're about to arrest armed robbers with a mop." Amara rolled her eyes. "Very funny." Chief Okafor folded the newspaper slowly while studying her. "You still have time to change your mind." "No, Amara. I need to do this." Her father sighed heavily. The truth was, he admired her determination even if he worried about her safety. "Your fake documents are ready," he said finally. "Nobody in the company knows who you are except me and the head of security." Amara nodded. "What name am I using?" "Amara Daniels." She smiled. "Slightly creative." I built billion-dollar companies, not fake identities. That made her laugh. A servant entered quietly, carrying a small ID card. Amara took it carefully. Her fake staff ID stared back at her. Name Amara Daniels. Position cleaning staff. For a strange moment, the card made everything real. Today, nobody would see her as Chief Okafor's daughter. Nobody would pretend to like her because of money. Nobody would bow, respectfully. They would only see the fat cleaner, and somehow that terrified her. Her father stood and walked toward her. You remember one thing. What? No matter what happens in that building, he said firmly, you are still my daughter. Emotion tightened her throat. Okay, Daddy. He kissed her forehead gently. Then she left. The company headquarters towered proudly over Victoria Island like a glass giant touching the clouds. Okafor, Global Holdings, the same company she had admired since childhood, but today felt completely different. As Amara approached the employee entrance, carrying a cleaning cart, nobody paid attention to her. Executives walked past her while typing on phones. Workers hurried inside holding coffee cups. Security guards barely glanced at her ID before waving her through impatiently. For the first time in her life, she understood what invisibility felt like. The human resources assistant assigned to cleaning staff was a thin woman with sharp eyes and an impatient voice. You're the new cleaner, yes, Ma. Can you read? Amara blinked. Yes. The woman tossed a mop toward her carelessly. Good. Follow Mama Busy. She'll show you around. No welcome, no smile, no respect. Just dismissal. Amara quietly followed the older cleaner walking ahead of her. Mama Busy was probably in her late 50s with tired eyes, but a warm face. Unlike the others, she smiled kindly at Amara. You're new. Yes, Ma. What's your name, Amara? Ah, beautiful name. The older woman smiled warmly. Don't be nervous. You'll learn fast. Something about her kindness immediately calmed Amara. As they walked through the massive building, Mama Busy explained the departments carefully. Executives on the top floors, finance on 6, human resources on 4, marketing on 3. Amara listened attentively while secretly observing everything around her. The building was luxurious, modern furniture, shiny marble floors, huge glass offices, but beneath the polished beauty there was tension. Employees moved carefully whenever managers passed by. Lower workers lowered their heads quickly during conversations. Some staff looked exhausted despite the early hour. And then came the first insult. Hey, cleaner. A woman snapped her fingers, loudly from nearby. Amara turned immediately. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, with heavy makeup and expensive heels. There's dust on my desk. Amara walked over politely. I'll clean it now. The woman eyed her body openly before smirking. You cleaners should stop eating during work hours and actually work. Several nearby employees laughed softly. Amara froze briefly. The insult landed harder than she expected. Mama Busy gently touched her arm. Come, the older woman whispered quietly. Amara swallowed her embarrassment and followed. But inside something hurt. Not because she hadn't heard worse before, but because this time nobody knew who she was. This was honest cruelty, raw and unfiltered, and the day had only just begun. By noon her entire body ached. Amara had never realized how physically exhausting cleaning work truly was. Sweeping, mopping, carrying heavy buckets, cleaning endless office spaces, while employees walked past without acknowledging her existence. Some people were polite enough to say thank you. Others acted like she was part of the furniture. One man nearly bumped into her without apologizing. Another dropped empty coffee cups directly onto freshly cleaned floors. But the worst were the whispers. She's too fat for this work. Look at how she's sweating. That uniform is struggling. Each comment chipped away at her confidence slowly. At lunchtime, Amara sat quietly alone near the staff cafeteria holding a bottle of water. Her feet hurt badly. She suddenly missed her old life terribly. Back home, she could simply rest whenever she wanted. Here, nobody cared whether she was tired. Nobody cared whether her feelings were hurt. And strangely, that realization opened her eyes. How many workers suffered silently every day while executives remained comfortably unaware? Why are you sitting alone? Amara looked up immediately. A tall man stood nearby holding a food tray. He wore a simple office shirt with rolled sleeves and carried tired but kind eyes. She had noticed him earlier that morning in the finance department. "Oh, I just needed rest. Mind if I sit?" She blinked in surprise. Nobody had voluntarily sat beside her all day. "Okay." He sat carefully across from her. "I'm Obina. Amara. New staff." "Yes." He nodded, knowingly. "First days here are usually stressful. You noticed." He laughed softly. "You looked like you wanted to resign before noon." That made her laugh unexpectedly. A genuine laugh. And somehow the tension inside her eased slightly. Obina opened his food pack casually. "Have you eaten?" "Not really." Without hesitation, he pushed part of his lunch toward her. "Take." Amara stared at him. "You don't have to." "I know." His tone was so simple and sincere that her chest tightened unexpectedly. Slowly, she accepted the food. "Thank you." "You're welcome." For several minutes, they ate quietly while employees moved around them. Then, Obina suddenly frowned. "Did Sandra insult you earlier?" Amara looked surprised. "The woman from marketing." He nodded. "She insults everybody." Amara forced a small smile. "I'm used to it." Obina's expression softened slightly. "You shouldn't be." The words hit her harder than he realized. Most people either ignored insults or joined them. But Obina sounded genuinely bothered by it, as if her feelings actually mattered. Before Amara could respond, another employee walked over. "Obina, meeting in 5 minutes." "I'm coming." He stood slowly and picked up his tray. Then he paused. "You'll be okay here," he said gently. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she believed him. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Amara continued working floor by floor, while secretly observing employees carefully. Some workers flirted openly with female interns. Others shouted aggressively at lower staff. One supervisor blamed a cleaner publicly for a mistake she clearly didn't make. And every time someone insulted or dismissed her, Amara wrote the names down secretly inside her phone notes. Not for revenge, for understanding. By evening, exhaustion consumed her completely. As she cleaned the finance department, quietly, she noticed someone approaching. "Obina again. You're still here." She sighed dramatically. "My legs are planning rebellion." He laughed softly. "I'm serious. I think I'm dying." "You'll survive." He glanced around before lowering his voice slightly. "Come. We'll sit for 5 minutes before the supervisor sees you." Amara hesitated before following him toward a quieter office corner. He handed her a cold bottle of juice from his desk. "You look tired." Her heart warmed unexpectedly. Nobody had treated her this gently in a very long time, especially not a man. "Thank you." Obina shrugged casually. "My mother raised me properly." Amara smiled. "You're different from the others here." He leaned back slightly. "That's because most people here are trying too hard to impress important people, and you're not." He shook his head. "I just want to survive and go home peacefully." Something about his honesty felt refreshing. No fake arrogance, no showing off, no cruelty disguised as humor, just kindness. Simple kindness. As Amara watched him organize files calmly, she realized something strange. Today had been painful, humiliating, exhausting, but meeting Obina somehow made it bearable. And deep down, she already knew this undercover journey was going to change her more than she expected. By the end of her first week at Okafor Global Holdings, Amara had learned three important things. First, people treated workers they considered beneath them terribly. Second, money truly changed how society saw a person. And third, Obina Nwosu was unlike anyone she had ever met. Monday morning began with chaos. The elevators were crowded. Employees rushed through hallways with files and laptops, and impatient voices echoed across the building. Amara pushed her cleaning cart carefully through the finance department while trying not to block anyone's path. "Cleaner, quickly clean this place." A man pointed rudely towards spilled coffee near a printer. Amara quietly nodded. As she bent carefully to clean the mess, two female workers nearby began whispering loudly enough for her to hear. "She's always breathing heavily." "Well, carrying all that weight is exercise." They laughed. Amara kept her head down, but inside embarrassment burned painfully through her chest. It amazed her how comfortable people felt insulting someone they considered unimportant. Back in America, people at least pretended to be polite. Here, cruelty was casual, normal. As she continued cleaning quietly, another voice suddenly interrupted. "Good morning, Amara." She looked up instantly. Obina stood nearby holding a stack of files against his chest. He smiled warmly, and somehow that single smile softened the humiliation she had been feeling moments earlier. "Good morning. You're early today. I had to clean the conference rooms upstairs." Obina shook his head sympathetically. "They work you people too hard." "You people." He laughed softly. "You know what I mean." Amara found herself smiling. Conversations with him always felt easy, natural. Unlike the others, he never looked at her with pity, disgust, or superiority. He simply looked at her like she mattered. And that confused her more than she wanted to admit. Later that afternoon, Amara struggled to carry a heavy container of cleaning supplies down the hallway. The bucket was larger than she expected, and her arms already ached from hours of work. She adjusted her grip carefully, but suddenly the bucket slipped slightly. Water splashed across the floor. "Oh no!" Before she could react properly, a sharp voice snapped behind her. "What nonsense is this?" Amara turned immediately. Sandra from marketing stood nearby glaring at the spilled water. "You people are so careless." "I'm sorry," Amara said quickly. "Sorry. Won't stop someone from slipping." Several nearby workers turned to stare. Amara bent quickly, trying to clean the mess before things worsened. But Sandra continued loudly. "They really need to stop hiring just anybody." Humiliation crawled up Amara's neck. She hated this feeling, the calm, helplessness, the inability to respond. Normally, one phone call from her father could end Sandra's entire career. But now she had to stand there silently and endure it. Then suddenly someone stepped beside her. It was an accident. "Obina." Sandra rolled her eyes instantly. "Why are you defending her?" "Because you're embarrassing her publicly over spilled water." Sandra scoffed. "She should do her job properly. And you should speak to people properly." The hallway became awkwardly quiet. Amara stared at Obina in surprise. Nobody had ever defended her this openly before. Not in school, not at parties, not even abroad. Sandra folded her arms angrily. "You know what? Mind your business." Obina shrugged calmly. "You made it everybody's business the moment you started shouting." Sandra hissed irritably before walking away in frustration. The moment she disappeared, Amara released the breath she'd been holding. Obina immediately crouched beside her. Sorry about that. You didn't have to argue with her. I know. Then why did you? He looked genuinely confused by the question. Because she was being wicked. The simplicity of his answer stunned her. No hesitation. No calculation. Just honesty. Together they cleaned the spilled water quietly. As they worked, Amara found herself studying him carefully. Obina wasn't flashy, like the wealthy men she usually met. His clothes were simple. His wristwatch looked old. His shoes had clearly been repaired before. Yet there was something steady about him. Something safe. What he asked suddenly. Amara blinked quickly. What? You're staring. Her cheeks warmed slightly. Oh, sorry. He laughed softly. You do that sometimes. Do what? Look at people like you're trying to understand them. Amara froze. Briefly. If only he knew how true that was. During lunch break, Obina invited her to sit with him outside the building again. The small outdoor area overlooked busy Lagos streets filled with honking cars and impatient Danfo buses. For once, Amara felt relaxed. Away from the whispers, away from the stares, away from the constant judgment inside the office. Obina opened a plastic food container while glancing at her. You barely ate, Peter. Yesterday. I wasn't hungry. That's a lie. Amara laughed softly. You always notice everything. My mother says I was born monitoring people. He pushed another food container toward her. Take. You brought extra food again. I have younger sisters, he explained casually. I'm used to feeding people. The way he spoke about his family immediately caught her attention. You live with your family. My two younger sisters. What about your parents? His expression shifted slightly. My father died years ago. Amara's smile faded instantly. I'm sorry. It's okay. He shrugged gently. Life happens. Something about the sadness hidden behind his calm voice made her chest tighten. What about your mother? She lives in Enugu with my grandmother. You support everyone. Obina laughed lightly. I try. Amara stared at him quietly. She suddenly understood why he worked so hard, why he stayed late, why he looked exhausted. Some mornings. This man carried responsibilities heavier than most people realized. Yet he still found time to be kind. That alone impressed her deeply. You? He asked suddenly. What about me? Your family. Amara hesitated carefully. She had rehearsed her fake backstory repeatedly with her father. My parents are late. The lie tasted bitter in her mouth. Obina's expression softened immediately. I'm sorry. It happened years ago. You have siblings. No, that must be lonely. She looked away slightly. You get used to loneliness after a while. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Obina watched her carefully. For a moment, Amara worried he somehow saw through her disguise completely. But instead, he simply said quietly, You shouldn't have to. Her heart skipped unexpectedly. Nobody spoke to her like this. Nobody looked at her with this much gentleness. And the dangerous part was she was beginning to crave it. As days passed, Amara and Obina slowly became closer. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but naturally. He always greeted her first, always checked whether she had eaten. Always carried heavy supplies for her without making her feel weak. And slowly, the office began noticing. One afternoon, two female workers whispered loudly as Amara cleaned nearby. Obina is too friendly with that cleaner. Maybe he likes big women. They laughed cruelly. Amara's chest tightened painfully. She immediately focused harder on mopping the floor. But before the embarrassment could fully settle, another voice interrupted calmly. And maybe you should focus on your work instead of gossiping. The women turned quickly. Obina stood behind them holding files. Both women looked uncomfortable instantly. We were joking. It wasn't funny. Silence. The women quickly walked away awkwardly. Amara stared at him. You keep rescuing me. He shrugged casually. You keep getting attacked. Despite herself, she laughed, and Obina smiled proudly like making her laugh mattered to him. That realization scared her more than it should have. Because somewhere between lunch breaks and hallway conversations, Amara had started looking forward to seeing him every day. Heavy rain poured across Lagos as most employees hurried home. Amara remained behind cleaning the executive floor quietly. The building felt strangely peaceful after office hours. As she mopped the hallway slowly, she heard footsteps approaching. Obina again. You're still here. She sighed dramatically. They said the floor must shine enough for executives to see their reflection. He laughed. Cruel people. Very. He walked beside her quietly for a moment, then suddenly asked, Can I tell you something? Amara looked up. Curiously. What? When? I first saw you. She held her breath slightly. You looked sad. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. I did. Yes. And now, Obina smiled faintly. Now you smile more. Something warm spread gently through her chest. For years, Amara had hidden behind expensive clothes, wealth, and carefully controlled confidence. But somehow this ordinary man noticed her emotions more clearly than anyone else ever had, even without knowing who she truly was. And for the first time in a very long time, Amara began wondering what it would feel like to be loved for herself instead of her surname. The thought terrified her, because deep down she was already falling for him. By the third week of working undercover at Okafor Global Holdings, Amara had stopped feeling like a visitor. The cleaning cart no longer felt awkward in her hands. The long hallways had become familiar. She now knew which elevators executives preferred, which departments stayed busiest, and which employees treated lower staff like human beings. Unfortunately, she had also started noticing something darker beneath the company's polished image. Something ugly, and at the center of it was branch manager Tunji Balagun. The first thing people noticed about Mr. Balagun was his smile. It was the kind of smile that looked friendly from far away but uncomfortable up close. He laughed loudly during meetings, complimented investors constantly, and always acted loyal whenever Chief Okafor visited the office. But behind closed doors he was feared. Amara noticed it almost immediately. Female employees became tense whenever he walked past. Interns avoided being alone with him. Secretaries lowered their eyes nervously during conversations, and cleaners whispered carefully whenever his name came up. One Monday morning, Amara was cleaning outside the executive offices when she heard raised voices from inside Mr. Balagun's office. You should be grateful I'm helping your career. The manager's voice sounded calm. Too calm. Another softer voice answered shakily. Sir, I already said I'm not interested. Amara paused instinctively. Then came silence. A few seconds later, the office door suddenly opened. A young female intern rushed out quickly, her eyes red with tears. The girl nearly collided with Amara before hurrying away down the hallway. Mr. Balagun stepped out immediately afterward. His eyes landed briefly on Amara. What are you staring at? Amara lowered her head quickly. Nothing, sir. He adjusted his expensive suit slowly before walking away. But Amara noticed something important. Fear. The intern had looked terrified. And suddenly, a cold feeling settled in Amara's stomach. That afternoon during lunch break, Amara sat beside Mama Bisi near the staff cafeteria. The older woman carefully unwrapped food from a small nylon bag while sighing tiredly. These rich people will kill somebody with stress one day. Amara smiled faintly. You say that every afternoon, and I mean it every afternoon. They both laughed softly. Then Amara lowered her voice carefully. Mama BC. Yes. The intern that ran out of Mr. Balagan's office. This morning. The older woman immediately became quiet. What about her? She was crying. Mama Busy looked around cautiously before speaking. My daughter, some things are better ignored. That answer alone told Amara everything. Her chest tightened. So it's true. The older woman sighed heavily. That man has disturbed many girls in this building. Amara felt anger rise instantly. What do you mean disturbed? Mama Busy hesitated. Then finally whispered. He asks for favors. Amara clenched her jaw. And if they refuse, the older woman gave a sad smile. They suddenly become bad workers. A wave of disgust crashed through Amara. She looked toward the executive floor instinctively. Mr. Balagan had worked under her father for almost 8 years. 8 years. How many women had suffered silently during that time? How has nobody reported him? Mama Busy laughed bitterly. To whom my father Amara stopped herself quickly. Mama Busy frowned slightly. Your father Amara's heart skipped. Oh, I meant if the owner knew. The older woman shook her head sadly. Big men are always too busy to notice what happens to small people. Those words hit Amara harder than expected, because for the first time she realized her father's company had become exactly that. A place where powerful people ignored the suffering beneath them. And somehow that hurt deeply. Later that evening, Amara stayed behind cleaning the conference rooms upstairs. Most employees had already gone home, leaving the building unusually quiet. As she arranged chairs carefully, she heard soft crying nearby. Her heart tightened instantly. Following the sound cautiously, she found one of the receptionists sitting alone near the restroom hallway. The woman quickly wiped her tears when she noticed Amara. I'm sorry, Amara said softly. Are you okay? The Barrier receptionist forced a fake smile. I'm fine. But her swollen eyes said otherwise. Amara sat beside her quietly. You don't have to pretend with me. For several seconds, the woman remained silent. Then finally she whispered, he won't leave me alone. Amara already knew who she meant. Mr. Balagan. The receptionist nodded slowly. He keeps asking me to visit his hotel apartment. Rage burned through Amara instantly. And if you refuse, the woman laughed bitterly through tears. He says my contract may not be renewed. Amara's hands clenched tightly. This wasn't flirting. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was abuse. Pure abuse of power. How long has this been happening? A year. A year. Amara felt sick. The receptionist quickly stood. Please don't repeat this conversation. I won't. If he finds out I complained, I'll lose my job. Amara watched the woman walk away with trembling hands. And in that moment, something changed inside her. This undercover mission was no longer just about understanding the company. Now it was personal because these women deserved protection. And the man hurting them worked for her family. The next few days became difficult for Amara emotionally. Once she knew the truth about Mr. Balagan, she started noticing even more disturbing behavior. The way he touched female employees unnecessarily. The private meetings he requested after work. The frightened expressions women wore whenever he called them into his office. And worst of all, nobody stopped him. One afternoon, Amara entered the finance department carrying cleaning supplies when she overheard two male workers talking quietly. Balogun almost got that new intern transferred. Which one? The light-skinned girl from HR. What happened? She refused to cooperate. Both men laughed casually. Amara stopped, walking completely. Cooperate. Was this behavior truly so normal to them? The anger inside her grew stronger daily, but through all of it Obina remained her one source of peace. That same afternoon he found her unusually quiet while she cleaned nearby. "You've been frowning all day." Amara sighed softly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What do you think about Mr. Balogun?" Obina's expression changed immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. "Why? Just answer." He looked around carefully before lowering his voice. "I don't trust him." Amra's heart beat faster. "You notice things too." Obina hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I've worked here 3 years," he said quietly. "Girls always resign suddenly after getting close to him." Amara felt both relieved and horrified. Relieved that she wasn't imagining things. Horrified that so many people knew. "Why hasn't anyone reported him?" Obina laughed bitterly. "He has connections. But that doesn't make him untouchable." In Nigeria, Obina gave her a sad smile. "Powerful men survive almost everything." The statement made Amara deeply uncomfortable, because technically, her father was one of those powerful people, and if she hadn't gone undercover herself, she might never have discovered any of this. That realization haunted her. That Friday evening, heavy rain poured outside while many employees waited inside the building for the storm to calm down. Amara stood near the lobby windows watching lightning flash across Lagos skies when Obina approached beside her holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look troubled." She accepted the cup carefully. "Thank you." "You still didn't answer my question." Amara stared at the rain quietly. "Do you ever feel disappointed in people?" Obina leaned against the window beside her. "Every day." She laughed softly, despite herself. Then her expression became serious again. "I just don't understand how some people can hurt others without feeling guilty." Obina studied her face carefully. "You care deeply about people, don't you?" The question surprised her. "I try to." "That's rare." Amara looked at him quietly. "And you?" Obina shrugged lightly. "I know what suffering feels like." His voice softened slightly. "So I try not to become the reason someone else suffers." Those words touched her deeply. Maybe that was why he felt different from everyone else in the building. He had kindness without performance, goodness without arrogance. The rain continued pouring heavily outside while silence settled comfortably between them. Then suddenly, Obina spoke again. "You know what I think." "What I think? Whatever is bothering you," he said gently, "you'll eventually fix it." Amara stared at him in surprise because without realizing it, he had spoken directly to the war growing inside her heart. And at that exact moment, Amara made a silent promise to herself. Mr. Balogun's days in that company were numbered. She would expose him no matter what it took. By the beginning of her 4th week undercover, Amara had become good at pretending. Pretending insults no longer hurt. Pretending she didn't notice the stares. Pretending she was just another invisible worker pushing a cleaning cart through endless office hallways. But inside she was changing. Every day inside Okafor Global Holdings exposed her to realities she had never fully understood before. She now understood why lower workers rarely smiled, why some employees looked constantly exhausted, why fear moved silently through certain departments whenever Mr. Balogun appeared. And most painfully, she understood what power could do in the wrong hands. That Monday morning began badly. Amara arrived early and immediately noticed tension throughout the building. Staff moved nervously while whispers spread quickly between departments. "What happened?" she quietly asked Mama Busy while arranging cleaning supplies. The older woman sighed tiredly. "One intern resigned yesterday." Why? Mama Busy looked around carefully before lowering her voice. "Balogun." Amara's stomach tightened instantly. She refused him. The older woman nodded sadly. And now she's gone. Anger burned through Amara immediately. Another woman pushed out quietly. Another career destroyed. And everyone simply continued working as if nothing happened. Amara clenched her jaw tightly. No more. She needed evidence. Real evidence. Not rumors. Not whispers. Something undeniable. And somehow, that thought would lead her directly into danger. Later that afternoon, Amara cleaned the executive floor more carefully than usual. Mr. Balogun's office sat near the corner, overlooking the Lagos skyline through massive glass windows. Normally, she avoided staying near his office for long. Today, she intentionally, as she wiped nearby desks slowly. Voices drifted through the partially open office door. You know what I expect from loyal staff. Balogun's voice. Another softer female voice answered nervously. Sir, please. Amara's grip tightened around the cleaning cloth. She stepped slightly closer while pretending to mop the floor. You're a beautiful girl. Balogun continued smoothly. I can make your promotion happen very quickly. Silence. Then I just want to work, sir. Amara's chest burned with anger. The manipulation in his voice made her sick. Suddenly, footsteps approached from the hallway. Amara immediately resumed cleaning normally as a female accountant hurried out of Balogun's office looking pale and uncomfortable. The moment the woman disappeared, Balogun himself stepped out. His eyes landed directly on Amara and stayed there. For a strange moment, Amara felt deeply uncomfortable beneath his gaze, like he was truly seeing her for the first time. You. Her heartbeat quickened slightly. Yes, sir. What's your name again, Amara? He stared at her body slowly before smirking. New cleaner. Yes, sir. Something about the way he looked at her made her skin crawl. Then he adjusted his suit casually and walked away. But the cold feeling in Amara's stomach remained. That evening during break time, Obinna found her unusually quiet again. You've been thinking too much lately. Amara forced a small smile. Is it obvious? Yes. They sat outside the building together beneath the fading evening sky while traffic noise filled the distance. Obinna handed her a bottle of malt. You need this. Why, your face looks like you want to fight somebody. She laughed softly despite herself, maybe because he was right. For days now, anger had been building quietly inside her, and every news story about Balogun made it worse. What would you do, she asked slowly, if you knew someone powerful was hurting people? Obinna leaned back thoughtfully. I'd want to stop them. But life is complicated. Amara frowned slightly. That sounds cowardly. No. He looked at her calmly. That sounds realistic. She crossed her arms. So people should just suffer. I didn't say that. His expression softened. I'm saying fighting powerful people is dangerous. The seriousness in his voice caught her attention. You've experienced that before. For a moment, Obinna became quiet. Then he nodded slightly. My father once worked for a politician. Amara listened carefully. He exposed corruption. Obinna laughed bitterly. By the next month, he lost everything. Amara's heart tightened. What happened afterward? He got sick from stress. Obinna looked away briefly. Then he died. Silence settled heavily between them. Amara suddenly understood something important about Obinna. His kindness wasn't weakness. It was survival. A man who had already seen what power could destroy. I'm sorry, she whispered. Obinna shrugged lightly. That's life. But Amara could hear the hidden pain beneath his calm tone. And somehow it made her want to protect him too. Thursday evening changed everything. Heavy rain clouds covered Lagos skies, and most employees hurried home before the storm began. Amara remained behind cleaning the executive hallway after office hours. The building had become unusually quiet. Only A lights remained on upstairs. She pushed her cleaning cart slowly while humming absent-mindedly to herself. Then suddenly Amara, her body stiffened instantly. Mr. Balogun stood behind her alone. She quickly lowered her head respectfully. "Good evening, sir. You're still working, yes, sir." He loosened his tie slightly while stepping closer. "Too close. You work very hard." "Thank you, sir." Amara tried continuing her cleaning her path casually. A strange tension filled the hallway. Immediately, "I've been observing you lately," he said softly. Fear crept quietly into Amara's chest. "Sir, you're different from the other cleaners." His eyes moved slowly over her body again. Amara suddenly understood exactly where this conversation was heading, and nausea twisted painfully inside her stomach. "I should finish cleaning, sir. You're always in a hurry." He smiled slightly. "But I like big women." Amara froze completely. The disgust in his tone made her skin crawl. "I don't understand, sir." "You do." He stepped even closer. Amara instinctively moved backward. The hallway suddenly felt too empty, too quiet, too dangerous. "You want to keep your job, don't you?" Her heartbeat pounded loudly now. "Yes, sir." "Then be smart." Amara gripped the cleaning cart tightly. "What do you mean?" Mr. Balogun smiled coldly. "I mean spend tonight with me." The words hit her like a slap. For 1 second Amara couldn't even speak. "You heard me," he continued calmly. "I have a private apartment nearby." Shock slowly transformed into anger. "No." His smile faded immediately. "No, I'm not that kind of person." Balogun laughed softly. "Everybody becomes that kind of person eventually." I said no, sir. The warmth vanished completely from his face, and suddenly the real monster underneath appeared. "You cleaners are all the same," he snapped coldly. "Always pretending." Amara's chest rose rapidly with panic and fury. "I'm leaving." But before she could move, he grabbed her arm violently. Amara gasped in shock. "Sir, let go. You should think carefully before refusing me." Fear exploded through her chest instantly. For the first time since beginning this undercover mission, Amara truly felt unsafe. She tried pulling away, but his grip tightened painfully. "You think you're special," he hissed. "I can throw you out of this company tomorrow. Leave me alone." But suddenly a fist slammed hard across Balogun's face. The manager stumbled backward violently. Amara stared in shock. Obinna stood there breathing heavily. His eyes burned with fury. "Touch her again," he growled, "and I swear I'll kill you." For a moment, nobody moved. Rain thundered loudly outside the building while tension filled the hallway. Balogun slowly touched his bleeding lip in disbelief. Then rage exploded across his face. "You're finished." Obinna stepped protectively in front of Amara immediately. She said no. "You stupid accountant," Balogun shouted furiously. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Obinna didn't move, and somehow seeing him stand there protecting her made Amara's chest ache emotionally. Nobody had ever defended her like this before. Nobody. Balogun pointed at them both angrily. "You're both losing your jobs tomorrow morning." Amara trembled slightly behind Obinna, not from fear anymore, from shock. Because in one terrifying moment everything had changed. And deep down she knew there was no turning back now. For several seconds after Obinna punched Mr. Balogun, the hallway felt frozen in time. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Only the sound of rain crashing violently against the building windows filled the silence. Amara stood trembling beside the cleaning cart, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Mr. Balogun slowly straightened himself, fury burning across his face. Blood stained the corner of his lip, and his expensive glasses had fallen crookedly across the floor. You are dead, he hissed at Obina. Obina didn't even flinch. She told you to leave her alone. Balogun laughed bitterly. You think you're a hero. I think you're a coward. Amara's eyes widened slightly. Nobody spoke to Mr. Balogun that way. Nobody. The manager's expression darkened dangerously. I'll destroy both of you. He pointed angrily at Obina. You especially. But Obina remained calm, almost frighteningly calm. Threaten me all you want, he said coldly. But if you ever touch her again, I won't stop at one punch. The hatred in Balogun's eyes deepened. Amara suddenly realized something terrifying. Obina had risked everything for her. His job, his income, his family's stability, all for a woman he believed was just a cleaner. The realization hit her emotionally harder than she expected. Balogun grabbed his glasses furiously from the floor. You people have no idea who you're dealing with. Then he stormed away down the hallway. The moment he disappeared around the corner, the tension finally broke. Amara released a shaky breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Suddenly, her legs felt weak. Obina immediately turned toward her. Are you okay? The gentleness in his voice nearly broke her. She nodded quickly. Yes. But her voice trembled badly. Obina's face softened immediately. He hurt you? No. Are you sure? That question alone almost made her cry. Not because she was weak, but because he genuinely cared. And she wasn't used to that kind of care from anyone outside her family. Obina glanced around the empty hallway before speaking quietly. Come. We're out of here. The rain outside was heavy and relentless. Most roads were already flooding slightly as thunder echoed across Lagos skies. Obina held his small umbrella over Amara carefully while leading her toward a nearby restaurant down the street. The umbrella barely covered both of them. Rain splashed against their legs as they walked closely together. You punched. Your boss, Amara said softly after several minutes. I noticed. Despite everything, she laughed quietly. Obina glanced at her. That's the first time you've smiled since upstairs. I'm still shocked. I'm still angry. His jaw tightened slightly as he spoke. You shouldn't have been alone with him. Amara looked down. I didn't know he would. Her voice faded. Obina stopped walking suddenly. Listen to me. She looked up slowly. What happened was not your fault. The seriousness in his eyes made her chest tighten painfully. For years, people had blamed her for things connected to her appearance. If boys mocked her weight, people said she should lose weight. If strangers stared rudely, people said she should dress differently. If men treated her badly, people asked what she expected. But Obina didn't blame her, not even slightly. And somehow, that healed something inside her she didn't realize was broken. They finally entered a small restaurant glowing warmly against the storm outside. The place was simple but cozy. Soft high-life music played quietly while the scent of fried rice and grilled chicken filled the air. A waitress led them to a corner table. Amara suddenly became aware of how strange this moment was. She was sitting in a tiny restaurant with an accountant who had just punched a senior manager for defending her honor. And somehow, she felt safer than she had in years. Obina noticed her staring quietly. What? You really didn't think before hitting him? He sighed tiredly. I did think. And still punched him. I thought about it for 2 seconds first. She laughed again, a real laugh this time. Obina smiled slightly, looking relieved to hear it. The waitress arrived to take their order. Obina immediately ordered for both of them without hesitation. You remembered what I like. You always stare at chicken when we pass this place. Amara blinked in surprise. You noticed that I notice a lot about you. The statement lingered softly between them. And suddenly Amara became very aware of how close they were sitting. Her heart beat strangely. Obina leaned back slightly and exhaled. I'm sorry. She frowned. For what? For not realizing earlier that Balogun was targeting you. You couldn't have known. I should have. Amara studied his face quietly. There was genuine guilt there. Real concern, not performative sympathy. Not fake heroism, just honest care. And it touched her deeply. You saved me, she whispered. Obina looked at her steadily. Anybody should have done that. But nobody else did. Silence settled briefly between them. The food soon arrived, steaming warmly between them, while rain continued pounding outside. For a while, they simply ate, quietly. Then Obina suddenly asked, Can I tell you something honestly? Amara nodded. When you first started working here, he smiled faintly. I worried about you. Why? You looked too soft for this environment. She laughed lightly. Soft, yes. He shrugged, like someone who hadn't experienced much cruelty before. The accuracy of his words startled her. If only he knew. You've changed, though, he continued. How you speak up more now. Amara looked down thoughtfully. Maybe he was right. This experience had changed her already, not just emotionally but mentally. She now saw workers differently, saw pain differently, saw leadership differently, and the person helping shape those changes most was sitting directly across from her. You know, Obina said quietly, most people here pretend. Amara looked up again. What do you mean they laugh with important people and insult weaker people? His expression hardened slightly. I hate people like that. Amara's chest tightened because technically she was pretending too. Every conversation between them carried a lie underneath it. And for the first time since starting this undercover mission, guilt truly began eating at her because Obina trusted her completely and she hadn't told him who she really was. After dinner, the rain finally slowed into a soft drizzle. The streets glistened beautifully beneath the city lights as they walked quietly together through the cool night air. Neither of them seemed eager to go home yet. You know, Obina said casually, you're different outside work. How you smile more. That's because nobody's insulting me currently. He laughed softly. Then after a moment his expression became serious again. You really shouldn't return to work tomorrow. Amara blinked. What Balogun will retaliate? I'm not scared of him. I am. She looked surprised. You, yes. Obina stopped walking briefly. Men like him are dangerous. Something emotional moved through her chest, hearing the fear in his voice. Not fear for himself. Fear for her. Then why did you stand up to him? Obina stared at her quietly for several seconds, then finally answered, because I couldn't stand there and watch him hurt you. The honesty in his voice stole her breath completely. For a moment neither of them spoke. Cars passed slowly nearby while distant music drifted through the city night. Then Obina smiled awkwardly. I think I'm talking too much. No, Amara whispered softly. You're not. They eventually reached a nearby park glowing beneath warm street lights. The rain had emptied most of the area, leaving the pathways peaceful and quiet. Amara sat carefully on a bench while exhaling deeply. Everything about tonight felt unreal. Just hours ago, she had been terrified in an office hallway. Now she was sitting beneath city lights with the one man who made her feel truly safe. Obina sat beside her quietly. You okay? Amara nodded slowly. Then, after a moment, she whispered, No one's ever defended me like that before. Obina frowned slightly. That's hard to believe. It's true. He looked at her carefully. You're a good person, Amara. Her chest tightened painfully. If only he knew who she really was. If only he knew she wasn't just some struggling cleaner. Would he still look at her this way? Would he still care? The thought terrified her suddenly because somewhere between shared lunches and quiet conversations, Obinna had become important to her. Dangerously important. The wind blew softly through the park while silence wrapped gently around them. Then slowly Obinna reached for her hand. Amara's breath caught instantly. His fingers were warm against hers. Careful, gentle, like he was afraid of hurting her. "You deserve better than this company," he said quietly. Amara stared at him, and for the first time in years she felt beautiful. Not because of makeup, not because of expensive clothes, not because of money, but because of the way this man looked at her. Like she mattered, like she was enough. Obinna slowly moved closer, close enough for her to hear his pulse, breathing, close enough for her heart to race wildly. And then he kissed her. Softly, carefully, perfectly. Amara's eyes closed instantly as emotion crashed through her chest. The world around them seemed to disappear completely. No insults, no lies, no pain, just warmth, just safety, just him. When they finally pulled apart, neither of them spoke immediately. Obinna looked slightly nervous now. "I'm sorry if that was too." Amara kissed him again, and this time he smiled against her lips. Amara barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she replayed everything that had happened. Mr. Balogun's hand gripping her arm, Obinna throwing that punch without hesitation, the warmth of his hand in the park, the softness of his kiss, and worst of all, the lie she was still hiding from him. She lay awake in her massive bedroom staring at the ceiling while the city lights glowed faintly through her windows. The mansion was quiet, peaceful, luxurious, but Amara's mind was chaos. By 5:00 a.m., she gave up trying to sleep and walked downstairs. She found her father already awake in his private study reading financial reports. The moment Chief Okafor looked up and saw her face, his expression changed immediately. "What happened?" Amara closed the office door behind her slowly. "We need to talk." Her father removed his glasses carefully, and as Amara explained everything, from the harassment complaints to Balogun assaulting her in the hallway, his face darkened with every word. By the time she finished, silence filled the room. Chief Okafor stood slowly from his chair. The quiet fury in his eyes was terrifying. "That man touched you." Amara nodded. Her father's jaw tightened dangerously. "I'm going to destroy him." "Daddy, no." His voice was cold now. "I trusted that animal inside my company. He's done worse to other women." "Chief." Okafor looked genuinely shaken. For the first time, Amara saw pain beneath his anger. Not just because she had been hurt, but because his company had become a place where women suffered silently. "I failed these workers," he said quietly. "No," Amara answered softly. "You just didn't know. That's still failure." The old billionaire walked toward the window slowly. For several moments he remained silent while Lagos slowly woke outside. Then finally, he turned toward her again. Pounded. Amara's heart pounded. "You mean reveal everything?" "Yes." Fear suddenly twisted inside her stomach. Not fear about the company, fear about Obinna. How would he react? Would he understand? Or would he feel completely betrayed? Her father studied her carefully. "You care about this young man." Amara looked down instantly. "He protected me." "That's not what I asked." Silence. Then finally she whispered, "Yes." Chief Okafor nodded. "Slowly. Then tell him the truth." Her chest tightened painfully. "I don't know how." "You start honestly." By 8:00 that morning, the atmosphere at Okafor Global Holdings was tense. Rumors had already spread quickly about the fight between Obinna and Mr. Balogun. Employees whispered nervously near elevators and hallways. Some claimed Obina had been fired already. Others claimed police were coming. Meanwhile, Obina sat quietly at his desk inside the finance department, trying unsuccessfully to focus on work. His knuckles still hurt slightly from the punch, but he didn't regret it, not even a little. One of his co-workers leaned closer nervously. "Guy, are you mad?" Obina barely looked up. "What, you punched Balogun? He deserved worse. Do you want to lose your job?" Obina finally looked at him calmly. "If protecting somebody costs me my job," he said quietly, "then maybe I don't belong here anyway." The coworker stared at him like he was insane, but Obina didn't care. All he could think about was Amara. He hadn't seen her since last night after dropping her home, and strangely, he missed her already. Before could think further, an announcement suddenly echoed through the building speakers. "Attention all staff. An emergency meeting has been scheduled immediately in the main conference hall. Attendance is mandatory." The entire office froze. Emergency meeting employees immediately began whispering nervously. Obina frowned slightly. Something about this felt unusual, very unusual. Inside the conference hall, hundreds of employees gathered anxiously. Managers stood near the front. Interns whispered nervously among themselves. Even Mr. Balogun looked unsettled. A dark bruise had already formed along the side of his face, making him appear even angrier. The moment his eyes landed on Obina across the room, hatred flashed instantly. Obina simply ignored him. Then suddenly the conference hall doors opened. Silence swept across the room immediately. Chief Emmanuel Okafor walked inside, surrounded by security personnel. Everyone straightened instantly. The billionaire rarely visited the branch personally, and when he did, something serious was happening. But then came the real shock. A woman walked beside him confidently in elegant black heels. Her curly hair flowed beautifully over her shoulders. Diamond earrings sparkled beneath the bright conference lights. Her fitted black dress hugged her figure gracefully, radiating power and confidence. The entire room stared in confusion. Some employees blinked repeatedly. Others looked between the woman and the janitor section in complete disbelief. Obina stopped breathing. No, couldn't be. But it was Amara. Not the shy cleaner in oversized uniforms. Not the quiet woman pushing cleaning carts through hallways. This woman looked powerful, elegant, untouchable, and suddenly everything about her made terrifying sense. The way she spoke, the way she observed people carefully, the intelligence behind her eyes, the sadness she carried. Obina's chest tightened painfully. Chief Okafor stepped forward calmly. "Good morning, everyone." Nobody answered. Shock had swallowed the room whole. The billionaire gestured toward Amara proudly. "I would like to officially introduce my daughter." A wave of whispers exploded instantly. "Amara Okafor." Gasps filled the conference hall. Several employees physically turned to stare at Amara in horror. Sandra nearly dropped her phone. Mama Beezy covered her mouth in shock, and Mr. Balogun's face lost all color completely. Chief Okafor continued firmly. "As of today, Amara Okafor will begin assuming leadership responsibilities as the future CEO of Okafor Global Holdings." Silence. Absolute silence. Amara slowly stepped forward. Her heart pounded wildly as she looked across the room at the people who mocked her, the people who ignored her, the people who showed kindness, and finally at Obina. His face held nothing but stunned disbelief. Pain stabbed through her chest instantly, but she forced herself to continue. "For the past several weeks," Amara said calmly, "I worked inside this company disguised as a member of the cleaning staff." The room erupted into louder whispers. "I wanted to understand how employees were treated when leadership wasn't watching." Her eyes moved slowly across the room. "What I discovered disappointed me deeply." Several workers immediately lowered their heads. Amara's voice hardened slightly. I witnessed bullying, disrespect, abuse of authority, then slowly she turned toward Mr. Balogun and sexual harassment. The manager immediately stood. This is nonsense. Sit down. Chief Okafor snapped coldly. Balogun froze instantly. Amara continued calmly. Yesterday evening, Mr. Tunde Balogun assaulted me after I rejected his advances. Shock rippled across the room. Several female workers looked emotional immediately. It is finally someone powerful had spoken the truth aloud. Balogun pointed furiously. She's lying. Amara didn't even flinch. She isn't the only victim. At that exact moment, several women in the room lowered their eyes emotionally. The receptionist from earlier began crying quietly. Chief Okafor's expression darkened further. An internal investigation has already begun. He announced coldly, and evidence against Mr. Balogun has been confirmed. Balogun's face paled completely. Security officers entered the room immediately. You can't do this, he shouted desperately, but nobody moved to help him. Nobody defended him. As security grabbed his arms, Amara stared at him steadily. Your power is finished. For the first time since meeting him, Mr. Balogun looked afraid. Truly afraid. He was dragged out of the conference hall screaming threats, while stunned silence remained behind. Amara exhaled slowly. One battle was over, but another waited directly in front of her. Because when she looked toward Obinna again, he wasn't smiling. He looked hurt. Deeply hurt. And somehow that pain affected her more than everything else combined. After the meeting ended, chaos exploded throughout building. Employees whispered everywhere. Some workers cried. Others panicked nervously about how they had treated Amara. Several Roots staff members were dismissed immediately based on complaints and observed misconduct during her undercover period. But Amara barely noticed any of it. Her attention remained fixed on one thing, Obinna. And, before she could reach him, he walked away. The moment the emergency meeting ended, the company exploded into chaos. Employees gathered in small groups whispering frantically, "Did you know she was the owner's daughter? Oh my God, I insulted her. What about Balogun? Security took him away." Every hallway buzzed with panic and shock. But while everyone else focused on gossip, Amara searched desperately for Obinna. She spotted him finally near the finance department elevators, walking away quickly with stiff shoulders and lowered eyes. Obinna. He didn't stop. Her chest tightened painfully. She hurried after him. Obinna, wait. This time he paused. Slowly, but he still didn't look at her immediately. The silence between them felt painfully different now. No warmth, no ease, just tension. When he finally turned toward her, the hurt in his eyes nearly broke her heart. You lied to me. The words were quiet, but they hit harder than shouting. Amara swallowed painfully. I know. Obinna laughed bitterly. No, I don't think you do. People nearby discreetly moved away, sensing the tension immediately. Amara lowered her voice. Can we talk privately? For a moment he looked like he wanted to refuse, but finally he nodded once. Fine. They walked silently toward the underground parking area beneath the building. The air felt cold and tense around them. Every step made Amara's anxiety worse. She had imagined this moment all morning, but nothing prepared her for the distance in Obinna's eyes now. The moment they reached a quieter section of the parking lot, Obinna turned toward her sharply. So who are you exactly? The pain behind the question crushed her. Obinna. No. He shook his head. I want to hear it properly. Amara took a shaky breath. My name really is Amara Okafor. He laughed softly again. Future CEO. Yes. Billionaire's daughter. Yes. Obinna looked away briefly, jaw tightening. You sat with me every day pretending to be poor. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? His voice rose slightly for the first time. Amara flinched. I wasn't pretending to mock anyone, she said quickly. I wanted to understand the company. So you disguised yourself as a cleaner? Yes, and everybody became some social experiment for you. The accusation stung badly because part of it was true. That's not fair. Fair, Obina looked at her in disbelief. Do you know how stupid I feel right now? Amara's chest tightened painfully. You're not stupid. I told you personal things. I know. I trusted you. The hurt in his voice shattered her completely. For weeks Obina had opened pieces of his life to her honestly. His struggles, his family, his fears. Meanwhile, she had hidden the biggest truth of all. Tears burned behind her eyes instantly. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. Silence. Heavy, painful silence. Obina rubbed his face tiredly. You know what hurts the most? Amara looked at him quietly. I believed every moment between us was real. It was real. Was it his eyes met hers finally? Or were you just studying me too? The question felt like a knife through her chest. No. How do I know that? You just have to believe me. Obina laughed bitterly. Again. That's difficult right now. Amara hated hearing that bitterness in his voice. This wasn't the gentleman who brought her food every afternoon. This was a man who felt humiliated, betrayed, and she couldn't even blame him. I wanted to tell you, she whispered, when she had no answer, because the truth was she didn't know. Every day she delayed telling him because she feared exactly this reaction. And somehow, that made things even worse. Obina nodded slowly. Exactly. He turned slightly away from her. I defended you thinking you were powerless. Emotion tightened Amara's throat. I was powerless in that moment. You know what I mean. She did. He thought he had rescued a vulnerable cleaner, not the daughter of the company owner, not a future CEO. And maybe now he felt foolish for believing she truly needed him. You mattered to me before you knew who I was, she said softly. Obina remained silent. You still matter. That's easy for you to say. Why are you acting like I tricked you for fun? Because you had choices I didn't. He snapped suddenly. The anger in his voice echoed through the parking lot. You got to remove your disguise whenever you wanted. His breathing grew heavier. But people like me don't get that luxury. Amara froze. Obina shook his head slowly. You got to experience our lives temporarily. His voice softened painfully. We actually live them. Those words hit her harder than anything else because deep down he was right. She could return to luxury whenever she wanted. Meanwhile, workers like Obina struggled every single day for survival. For the first time since starting this undercover mission, shame truly settled heavily inside her. I know I can't fully understand your life, she admitted quietly. Obina stared at her silently. But I was trying. He looked away again. That doesn't erase the lies. Amara stepped closer slowly. Then let me fix it. How? By being honest now. Silence lingered between them. Then finally Obina asked quietly, did you laugh at me with your rich friends? Shock flashed across her face immediately. What? No. Did you ever go home and joke about the poor accountant who shared his lunch with you? Never. The disgust in her voice sounded genuine enough that Obina finally looked at her properly again. Amara's eyes were already filled with tears. You think I could ever laugh at you after everything you did for me? His expression shifted slightly. You protected me when nobody else did, she whispered emotionally. You cared about me before you knew anything about money. Obina's jaw tightened. That's what makes this painful. Amara wiped her tears quickly. I didn't fake my feelings for you. But you hid yourself from me because I was scared. He frowned slightly. Scared of what? That once you knew who I really was. Her voice cracked softly. You'd stop seeing me. Obina stared at her silently. Amara laughed weakly through tears. You know the strange thing, what? You were the first person in years who looked at me without seeing my father's money first. The honesty in her voice softened something inside him immediately. I liked who I became around you, she admitted quietly. Just Amara, not Chief Okafor's daughter, not the billionaire heiress, just me. Obina exhaled slowly. The anger inside him was still there, but now he could also hear the vulnerability beneath her words. For weeks, he had seen loneliness in her eyes, without understanding why. Now it finally made sense. People probably approached her differently. They discovered who she was. And maybe underneath all the wealth and elegance, she truly had been searching for something real, for someone real. Still, the hurt remained. You should have trusted me enough to tell me. I know. They stood quietly facing each other while distant traffic sounds echoed faintly from outside. Then suddenly Amara reached into her bag and pulled something out, his old handkerchief. The one he gave her during her second week after she accidentally cut her finger cleaning glass. You kept that. I keep everything connected to you. Obina's chest tightened unexpectedly. I didn't fall for your money, she whispered. I fell for the man who shared his food with a cleaner everybody ignored. The parking lot grew silent again. Then, slowly, very slowly, some of the anger in Obina's face faded, not completely, but enough. You really scared me yesterday, he said quietly. Emotion flooded Amara instantly. I was scared too, and even after revealing yourself today. He shook his head slightly. The first thing you did was look for me, because you matter. Obina stared at her for a long moment, then finally sighed deeply. You know this is going to take time. I know. You hurt me. I know. And I'm still angry. Amara nodded slowly. You deserve to be. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Obina laughed softly. What? You still sound like the same woman who used to complain about mopping floors. Despite everything, Amara smiled. Faintly. My back still hurts from those floors. That's because you cleaned like somebody fighting invisible enemies. She laughed through her remaining tears, and somehow that small shared laughter broke the tension between them slightly. Obina stepped closer carefully, not fully closing the distance, but enough. I don't know what happens now, he admitted quietly. Amara looked up at him hopefully. But I know one thing. What? When Balogun grabbed you yesterday, his expression softened painfully. Nothing about my feelings was fake. Her heart swelled instantly. Mine weren't fake either. Obina stared at her for another long moment. Then finally slowly he pulled her gently into his arms. Amara closed her eyes immediately as relief crashed through her chest. Not complete forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. The first month after Amara's reveal felt like a storm sweeping through Okafor Global Holdings. Everything changed and everyone felt it. The company that once operated on fear, silence, and hidden cruelties suddenly found itself under intense transformation. Some employees welcomed the changes immediately, others resisted quietly, and a few openly feared what Amara might expose next. But one thing became very clear very quickly. New Future CEO was nothing like they expected. On Monday morning, the executive boardroom remained unusually tense. Senior managers sat around the long glass table exchanging nervous glances while waiting for Amara to arrive. Many of them had underestimated her completely. To them, she had only been Chief Okafor's daughter. Spoiled, protected, soft. But after discovering she willingly worked undercover as a cleaner for weeks, nobody viewed her the same way anymore. The boardroom doors finally opened. Amara walked inside, confidently in a fitted navy blue suit, carrying a stack of files against her chest. The room immediately stood respectfully. She noticed it instantly. The same people who once ignored her in hallways now straightened nervously whenever she entered. The difference still unsettled her. "Good morning," she said calmly. "Good morning, Ma." The executives answered together. Amara sat at the head of the table quietly. For a brief moment, she remembered pushing a cleaning cart through these same hallways while employees mocked her openly. Now they watched every movement carefully. Power truly changed people, and somehow that realization made her sad more than proud. One executive cleared his throat nervously. "We reviewed the harassment reports, Ma." Amara nodded. "Good. The legal department is preparing charges against Mr. Balogun." Her eyes hardened slightly. "Make sure every victim receives company-funded legal and emotional support." The room became quiet. That wasn't normal corporate procedure. One older executive adjusted his glasses carefully. "Ma, with respect, wouldn't it be wiser to settle this quietly?" Amara looked directly at him. "No." The firmness in her voice surprised even herself. This company protected predators through silence for too long. Nobody argued after that. And deep down, Amara realized something important. For the first time in her life, people were listening to her. Not because of pity, not because of appearance, but because of leadership. Outside the boardroom, whispers still followed her everywhere. Some employees admired her courage, others feared her. A few resented her completely, but Amara ignored all of it. She had bigger priorities now. By the second week, she introduced sweeping reforms across the company: anonymous complaint systems, mandatory anti-harassment training, salary reviews for lower staff, mental health support for employees, additional paid leave for cleaners and junior workers. When the announcements were made publicly, shock spread throughout the company, especially among lower staff members. Many cleaners nearly cried hearing the changes. Mama BZ openly wept during the announcement meeting. "Nobody has ever cared about workers like this before." The older woman whispered emotionally. Amara hugged her tightly afterward. But despite the progress happening around her, one area of her life still felt fragile. Obina, things between them improved slowly after their confrontation in the parking lot. Very slowly. Obina still needed time to process everything, and Amara respected that. At work, he now addressed her more formally in front of others. "Good morning, Ma." Every time he said it, Amara hated it slightly because she missed hearing him simply say her name. Still, there were moments when the old warmth returned unexpectedly. One afternoon, Amara sat alone in her office reviewing financial reports when someone knocked gently. "Come in." Obena stepped inside holding a file, but instead of immediately discussing work, he frowned slightly. "You skipped lunch again." Amara blinked. "How do you know that? You always get headaches when you don't eat." Her heart softened instantly. Even now, he still noticed things about her. "I've been busy." "That's not an excuse." She smiled faintly. "You sound like my father. That should worry you." Despite herself, she laughed softly. The tension between them eased slightly again. Obina placed the file on her desk. Then, after hesitating briefly, he pulled something else from a nylon bag. "Food." Amara looked up in surprise. "You brought me lunch." "You'll collapse if you keep working like this." Emotion warmed her chest unexpectedly. "Thank you." Obina shrugged awkwardly. "I was passing by the restaurant. You bought my favorite rice while randomly passing by." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Maybe." Their eyes met briefly, and for a moment things felt almost normal again. Almost. Meanwhile, outside work, Amara's life became increasingly overwhelming. News about her undercover experience spread rapidly through business circles and social media. Some people praised her leadership, others mocked her. Internet blogs cruelly discussed her weight alongside company news. She's brave but needs a gym. How can a company CEO look like that? Maybe the cleaners mistook her for one of them. Naturally, Amara pretended the comments didn't bother her. But late at night, she still read them sometimes. And every cruel word reopened old wounds. One evening, Obina found her sitting quietly alone in her office long after most staff had gone home. The city lights glowed beautifully behind her through the giant windows. "You're still here." Amara quickly locked her phone. "Yes." Obina studied her face carefully. "You've been crying." "No, I haven't." "You rub your nose when you lie." She sighed softly. "You notice too much." He walked closer slowly. "What happened?" For a moment, Amara considered lying again, but she was tired of hiding. So instead, she handed him the phone silently. Obina read the comments on the screen. His expression darkened immediately. "These people are idiots." Amara laughed bitterly. "Millions of idiots." He looked up sharply. "Why are you reading this rubbish?" "Because part of me still cares." The honesty in her voice hurt him. Obina pulled a chair beside her quietly. "Can I tell you something?" "What?" "When I first met you," Amara looked at him carefully, "I noticed your smile before your body." Her chest tightened instantly. "And even when you wore those janitor uniforms," he continued softly, "I still thought you were beautiful." Tears filled her eyes unexpectedly because she believed him. Every word. Obina reached for her hand gently. "You've spent too many years listening to cruel people." Amara looked down quietly. "You know the strange thing. What I used to think losing weight would automatically make people love me." Obina frowned slightly. "And now I realize cruel people will always find something to attack." Silence settled softly between them. Then Obina smiled faintly. "For what it's worth," Amara looked up, "I like you exactly the way you are." Something inside her healed quietly hearing those words. Not because he magically erased her insecurities, but because he spoke with such honest certainty, like he truly meant it. And maybe for the first time in her life, Amara started wanting to love herself too. Over the next several months, the company transformed dramatically under Amara's leadership. Employee morale improved, profits increased, departments became more efficient, and slowly, the toxic culture that once infected the company began disappearing. Workers smiled more. Lower staff finally felt respected. Even the office environment physically changed. Amara renovated employee lounges, improved cafeteria meals, and created wellness programs for workers. But unlike the harsh weight loss culture she experienced growing up, her wellness program focused on health rather than shame. Exercise classes, mental health seminars, nutrition, education, stress management, no humiliation, no insults, no pressure, just support. One afternoon, Amara surprised everyone by joining beginner exercise sessions herself. At first, employees looked shocked watching the future CEO sweating alongside cleaners and interns. But eventually, people relaxed, and somehow the company began feeling more human, more connected. One evening after work, Obina watched Amara laughing during a dance fitness session with several female employees. Her cheeks glowed warmly from exercise while genuine happiness lit her face. And suddenly he realized something. She was changing too, not just the company herself. Later that night, as they walked toward the parking lot together, Obina smiled softly. "You look happier these days." Amara glanced at him. "I think I am." "You've stopped hiding." The words lingered gently between them, because he was right. She no longer shrank herself emotionally, no longer apologized for existing, no longer believed she needed to become smaller to deserve love. And the man walking beside her played a huge role in that healing. They stopped near her car. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then quietly, Obina asked, "Do you regret it? What going undercover?" Amara thought carefully before answering. It was painful. Obina nodded slightly. But, but it helped me find truth. He smiled faintly. About the company, Amara looked directly at him. About people. Silence. Then she stepped closer slowly. And about love. Obina's expression softened immediately. Without another word, he pulled her gently into his arms, and this time there was no hesitation between them anymore. By the time 6 months passed under Amara's leadership, Okafor Global Holdings had become almost unrecognizable. Profits had increased dramatically. Employee satisfaction had doubled. The toxic fear that once filled the building had slowly disappeared, replaced by something warmer. Respect, hope, and for the first time in years, workers actually smiled inside the company. Business magazines praised Amara's leadership style openly. Newspapers called her the people's CEO. Even international investors became interested in the company's sudden transformation. But alongside the success came something Amara never truly prepared for. Tension. Constant attention. Everywhere she went now, cameras followed. Blogs analyzed her appearance. Social media discussed her personal life daily. And the moment the public discovered she was dating one of the company's former accountants, everything exploded. The story broke on a Thursday afternoon. A photo of Amara and Obina leaving a restaurant together appeared online. Then another, then videos. By evening, social media was in chaos. Billionaire heiress dating former employee. The cleaner CEO finds love in her office. Who is Obina Nwosu? Amara sat frozen inside her office, staring at her phone while notifications flooded endlessly across the screen. Her assistant looked overwhelmed. "Ma, several media companies are requesting interviews." Amara sighed heavily. "Decline them." "Yes, Ma." But declining interviews didn't stop the internet. Within hours, strangers had already found Obina's social media pages. People analyzed his clothes, his background, his family. His entire life suddenly became public discussion. Some comments were supportive, others were cruel. Love is beautiful. He defended her before knowing she was rich. That's real. She's lucky to find a good man. But then came the uglier comments. He definitely hit jackpot. No poor man says no to billionaire money. He endured her because of inheritance. Amara's stomach twisted painfully reading them because she knew Obina and she knew how deeply those accusations would hurt him. He had pride, dignity, integrity, and now strangers were reducing him to a gold digger. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Obina entered quietly. The moment their eyes met, Amara immediately stood. "I'm so sorry." He frowned slightly. "For what?" "All this." She gestured helplessly toward the phone. Obina sighed softly before walking closer. "It's not your fault. They're attacking you because of me. They don't know me. That doesn't stop it from hurting." Silence lingered briefly, then unexpectedly. Obina smiled faintly. "You know what my younger sister asked me this morning?" Amara blinked. What? He laughed softly. "She asked if I could now afford private jets." Despite herself, Amara burst into laughter. Obina grinned. "She already sent me a list of things she wants." The tension in the room eased instantly. That was one thing Amara loved about him. Even during difficult moments, He somehow made her breathe easier. But the laughter faded quickly. She called me this morning too. Who, your aunt? Amara groaned immediately. Auntie Ephioma, yes. What did she say? Obina hesitated. That maybe I should remember people from my background don't belong permanently in wealthy families. Anger flashed across Amara's face instantly. She said that to you. She thinks she's protecting you. No. Amara's voice hardened. She's insulting you. Obina shrugged lightly. I've heard worse. But that answer only hurt Amara more, because he shouldn't have to hear worse. Not from strangers. Not from her family. Not from anyone. She moved closer immediately. You don't deserve this. Obina looked at her quietly. Neither do you. Amara laughed bitterly. At least you're being attacked for your bank account. She looked down sadly. People attack me, just for existing. The room became quiet, because that was the painful truth. Ever since becoming public, the cruel comments about her weight had intensified again. People criticized her clothes, her body, her face, her relationship, everything. One blogger even wrote, "How can such a successful company be led by someone who clearly lacks self-control?" Amara pretended those comments no longer affected her, but some nights they still did. Obina reached for her hand gently. Look at me. She slowly lifted her eyes. You know those people online? He asked softly. Yes, they're miserable. Amara smiled faintly. That sounds biased. It is. She laughed quietly. Then his expression became serious again. I mean it, Amara. People who are happy with themselves don't spend their time tearing others down. Emotion tightened her throat. You always know what to say. That's because I spend most of my day thinking about you. Her heart melted instantly. Even after everything, the chaos, the pressure, the attention, he still looked at her like she was the best part of his life. And somehow that mattered more than every cruel comment combined. The following week, things escalated further when a business television network requested a live interview with Amara. First, she refused, but Chief Okafor convinced her otherwise. You can't hide forever. I'm not hiding. You're avoiding. Amara sighed heavily while pacing his office. I don't want our relationship becoming entertainment. Her father smiled slightly. Too late. She groaned dramatically. Chief Okafor chuckled softly before becoming serious. People already admire your leadership. Let them also see your humanity. Amara looked unconvinced. And if they attack Obina again, they will, her father said honestly. She frowned. That's encouraging. Princess. His voice softened. People attacked me when I was poor. They attacked me when I became rich. Human beings always talk. Amara crossed her arms. So your advice is to ignore everybody. My advice is simple. He smiled warmly. Protect your peace and hold tightly to people who truly love you. And immediately, she thought about Obina. The television interview aired nationwide that Friday evening. Amara sat nervously beneath bright studio lights, while cameras pointed directly at her. Across Nigeria, millions watched. The interviewer smiled politely. You've become one of the most talked about businesswomen in the country. Amara smiled carefully. I think the internet enjoys drama. The audience laughed softly. The interview started professionally: company growth, leadership changes, employee reforms. But eventually the interviewer leaned forward knowingly. And now to the question everybody wants answered. Amara already knew. Obina Nwosu. The audience reacted immediately. The interviewer smiled wider. Did you fall in love with him before or after he discovered you were the owner's daughter? Amara's lips curved softly. Before. And what made him special? For a moment Amara became quiet. Then finally she answered honestly. He was kind to me when he had absolutely nothing to gain from it. The studio audience applauded softly, but the interviewer continued. Some critics claim the relationship is unrealistic because of the wealth difference. Amara's expression hardened slightly. Love isn't measured by bank accounts. The audience clapped louder this time. Then, unexpectedly, the interviewer asked, "So why him?" Amara smiled faintly. "Because he saw me before the world did." That answer spread across social media within minutes. And for once, most people reacted positively. But the biggest surprise came 2 days later. Obinna himself was invited onto a radio interview. At first, he refused repeatedly until his younger sisters practically forced him. "You can't keep hiding," one sister argued dramatically. "And if you embarrass us, we'll deny being related to you," the other added. By the time he finally arrived at the station, he looked deeply uncomfortable. The host grinned excitedly. "So this is the famous Obinna." Obinna laughed awkwardly. "I'm beginning to regret coming." The interview started lightly. Questions about work, his family life before the media attention. But eventually the host leaned forward with curiosity. "I have to ask what everybody's wondering." Obinna sighed. "Go ahead." "Why Amara?" The room became quiet. Obinna smiled slowly, and suddenly every nervousness disappeared from his face. "Because she has the kindest heart I've ever known." The host blinked slightly. "That's it. That's everything." Silence filled the studio briefly. Then Obinna continued softly. "When people look at her, they see money or appearance first." He shook his head. "I see someone who genuinely cares about people." Back at home, Amara sat frozen, listening to the interview live from her bedroom. Tears filled her eyes instantly because he spoke with such certainty, such pride, no shame, no hesitation. He loved her openly, loudly. And after years of feeling unwanted, that kind of love felt almost unreal. When the interview ended, Amara grabbed her car keys immediately. 30 minutes later, she stood outside Obinna's apartment building. The moment he opened the door and saw her emotional face, he frowned slightly. "What happened?" Amara walked straight into his arms. "You." Obinna laughed softly while holding her close. "What did I do now?" She looked up at him with watery eyes. "You loved me publicly." His expression softened instantly. "Amara, you didn't sound embarrassed." Her voice cracked slightly. "You sounded proud." Obinna touched her face gently. "I will never be embarrassed by loving you." And hearing those words healed parts of her heart she thought would stay broken forever. The Lagos skyline shimmered beautifully beneath the evening sun as Amara stood inside her office staring through the massive glass windows. Nearly a year had passed since she first walked into Okafor Global Holdings disguised as a cleaner. A year. Sometimes it still felt unreal. The company had transformed completely under her leadership. Employee satisfaction had reached record levels. Several international companies now partnered with Okafor Global Holdings. And for the first time in decades, lower staff members genuinely felt valued. But beyond business success, Amara herself had changed too. The woman staring back at her in the reflection was no longer the insecure girl who hid behind oversized clothes and nervous smiles. She still had insecurities, sometimes still had difficult days, still occasionally heard cruel voices from her past whispering old insults inside her mind. But now those voices no longer controlled her. And much of that healing began with one man. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Obinna entered carrying 2 takeaway cups of coffee. Amara smiled instantly. "You spoil me too much." He handed her 1 cup. "You skipped lunch again." She laughed softly. "You sound exactly like my father now." "That means I'm becoming wise." "No," she teased. "It means you're becoming dramatic." Obina placed a hand against his chest. I sacrifice my peace daily for this relationship. Amara burst into laughter. Moments like this still amazed her. After all the media attention, social pressure, and public criticism, they still found peace in each other. Simple peace. The kind that made hard days easier. Obina sat across from her quietly. His expression looked thoughtful. Too thoughtful. Amara narrowed her eyes suspiciously. What that face? What face? The one you make when your brain is planning nonsense. Obina laughed softly. I'm offended. You should be. But despite the teasing, Amara noticed something different about him lately. He seemed distracted, nervous sometimes. And every time she asked about it, he brushed it aside casually. Now he checked his wristwatch again. Definitely suspicious. You're hiding something. I'm not. You just looked at your watch for the fourth time. I have places to be. Oh, she raised an eyebrow dramatically. Another woman. Obina stared at her flatly. Yes. Her name is Nosy and she owns a goat farm. Amara laughed loudly. I knew it. She's very beautiful. I hate you. No, you don't. Though she really didn't. Later that evening, Amara arrived home, exhausted, after a long strategy meeting with international investors. The moment she entered the mansion, she noticed something unusual. The house staff looked strangely excited. One maid nearly dropped the tray after seeing her. Another servant grinned suspiciously before quickly walking away. Amara frowned. What's happening? Nobody answered properly, which only made her more suspicious. When she entered the dining room, she found her father smiling far too innocently. Immediately dangerous. What did you do? Chief Okafor looked offended. Why do you assume I've done something? Because you're smiling like a Nollywood villain. He laughed loudly. You insult your father too much. Amara sat carefully. You're avoiding my question. Before he could answer her, phone buzzed. Obina. Her expression softened instantly as she answered. Hello. Get dressed. She blinked. What? Wear something nice. Amara narrowed her eyes suspiciously. You people are plotting something. Who is you people? You and my father. Chief Okafor suddenly became deeply interested in his soup. Traitor. Obina laughed softly through the phone. I'm picking you up in 1 hour. For what? It's a surprise. I hate surprises. No, you don't. Then he ended the call before she could argue further. Amara stared at her phone suspiciously, then slowly turned toward her father. You know what's happening. Chief Okafor lifted both hands innocently. I know nothing. Liar. Exactly 1 hour later, Obina arrived. The moment Amara opened the door and saw him, her heart skipped slightly. He looked incredibly handsome in a black suit. Simple, elegant, dangerously attractive, and judging by the way he stared at her, he clearly liked her appearance too. Amara wore a deep emerald green dress that flowed softly around her curves. Her hair rested naturally over her shoulders. And for once she hadn't spent an hour criticizing herself in the mirror beforehand. Obina smiled slowly. You look beautiful even after all this time. Hearing those words from him still affected deeply. You clean up nicely too. He placed a hand dramatically against his chest. That compliment healed my financial problems. Amara laughed, then suddenly noticed his hands shaking slightly. Her smile faded. You're nervous. What? No, Obina. I'm perfectly calm. You're literally sweating. It's Lagos. Inside air conditioning. He sighed heavily. Fine, maybe slightly nervous. That only made her more suspicious. Why you ask too many questions? Before she could continue interrogating him, he quickly guided her toward the car. The drive through Lagos felt strangely peaceful. Soft music played quietly, while city lights reflected beautifully across the roads. Amara kept glancing suspiciously at Obina every few minutes. He kept adjusting his wristwatch. Definitely nervous. You're planning murder. What I've solved it. He laughed helplessly. Yes. I dressed expensively to commit crimes. Exactly. You watch too many movies. But despite the jokes, Amara's curiosity kept growing, especially when Obina drove toward the park where they shared their first kiss. The moment she recognized the location, her expression softened instantly. You remembered. Of course I remembered. The park looked breathtaking tonight. Warm fairy lights wrapped around trees beautifully. Soft instrumental music floated gently through the evening air. Candles lined parts of the walkway. Amara stopped walking slowly. Oh my God. Obina suddenly looked even more nervous, which confirmed everything instantly. Her heart began pounding wildly. No, no way. He couldn't possibly. Obina. He swallowed visibly. Come. He led her toward the exact bench where they once sat after he rescued her from Mr. Balogun. The memories flooded her instantly. The rain, their conversation, their first kiss, the beginning of everything. Amara looked around emotionally. You did all this, Obina rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. My sisters helped. She laughed softly through rising emotions. Of course they did. For a few moments they simply stood there quietly beneath glowing lights while Lagos moved distantly around them. Then Obina finally took her hands gently, and suddenly Amara realized just how badly he was trembling. Her chest tightened immediately. You okay? Obina laughed nervously. No. That answer somehow made her love him even more. He took a deep breath, slowly. Amara. His voice softened. Before I met you, he smiled faintly. I thought life was just survival. Emotion filled her chest instantly. Wake up, work. Pay bills, repeat. She listened silently. But then one day he laughed softly. A stubborn cleaner entered my office carrying a mop like she wanted to attack the building. Amara burst into laughter through sudden tears. You're making fun of me during an emotional moment. It's part of my process. She shook her head while smiling emotionally. Obina's expression softened again. You changed my life. The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache beautifully. You taught me that kindness still matters. Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks quietly now. You taught me courage too, he continued softly. The kind that stands up even when afraid. Obina took another shaky breath, and somehow you made me feel seen. Amara's chest tightened painfully, because those were the exact same feelings she carried about him. Then suddenly Obina slowly went down on one knee. Her breath caught instantly. Everything around her disappeared. The music, the lights, the city. All she could see was him, the man who defended her before knowing her wealth, the man who loved her publicly without shame, the man who helped her finally love herself. Obina pulled out a small velvet ring box carefully. His hands still trembled. I know your world is bigger than mine, he whispered emotionally. Amara immediately shook her head. No, but listen first. Tears continued sliding down her cheeks. I don't care about your money. He opened the box slowly. Inside sat a stunning diamond ring sparkling beneath the fairy lights. I care about your heart. Amara covered her mouth instantly as emotion overwhelmed her completely. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Obina smiled shakily. So Amara Okafor. His eyes locked onto hers completely. Will you marry me? For 1 second Amara couldn't speak. She simply stared at him while years of insecurity, loneliness, pain, and healing crashed through her chest all at once. The girl who once believed nobody could truly love her was now being loved completely, fully, openly, and the man asking for her heart looked at her like she was the greatest treasure in the world. Amara, Laughed through tears. Yes. Obinna blinked. Yes. Yes. He immediately stood as she threw her arms around him emotionally. Both of them laughed while holding each other tightly. You scared me, he admitted breathlessly. You scared yourself. That's true. Amara kissed him instantly. Long, warm, perfect. And somewhere nearby, hidden behind trees, Obinna's sisters screamed excitedly. Amara burst into laughter against his lips. You brought witnesses I needed. Emotional support. She laughed harder. Then Obinna gently slipped the ring onto her finger. The diamond sparkled beautifully beneath the lights. But honestly, nothing shined brighter than the happiness in their eyes. The wedding of Amara Okafor and Obinna Nwosu became one of the biggest events Lagos had seen in years. For weeks, social media buzzed nonstop. Business magazines discussed it, entertainment blogs analyzed every detail. News stations called it the billionaire heiress and the accountant. But for Amara and Obinna, it wasn't about headlines. It was about love. Real love. The kind both of them fought hard to find. On the morning of the wedding, the Okafor mansion overflowed with excitement. Makeup artists rushed through hallways. Bridesmaids screamed over decorations. Family members moved around in expensive traditional outfits while music played loudly downstairs. And in the middle of all the chaos, Amara sat quietly in front of a giant mirror staring at herself. Her white wedding dress flowed beautifully around her body like something from a dream. Tiny crystals sparkled softly across the fabric while her veil rested gently behind her. She looked beautiful, truly beautiful. And for once, she believed it herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Mama Bisi entered slowly, wearing elegant traditional attire. The older woman froze, emotionally, the moment she saw Amara. My daughter. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Amara stood smiling warmly. You're crying already. Mama Busy laughed through tears. How will I not cry? She shook her head emotionally. Look at you. Amara hugged her tightly. Months ago they had cleaned office hallways together. Now Mama Busy stood Shrey, Shrey. On her wedding day, life truly changed unexpectedly. You know something? The older woman whispered softly. What? The first day I met you, I knew you were special. Amara laughed. You absolutely did not. I did. You thought I was too soft for cleaning. Mama Busy burst into laughter. That part is true. They both laughed together warmly. Then Mama Busy touched Amara's face gently. You deserve this happiness. Emotion tightened Amara's throat instantly, because for so many years, she truly believed she didn't. Meanwhile, across town, Obinna's apartment was complete chaos. His younger sisters moved around excitedly while trying unsuccessfully not to cry. You're actually getting married. I know. To a billionaire. Obinna rolled his eyes. To Amara. His sisters immediately smiled knowingly. That answer alone explained everything. Obinna adjusted his suit nervously while staring at himself in the mirror. He still couldn't fully believe this was real. Sometimes, he remembered the first day he saw her sitting alone during lunch break, wearing janitor overalls, and looking exhausted. Back then, he simply wanted to make sure she ate properly. Now she was about to become his wife. Life was strange. Very strange. One of his sisters suddenly narrowed her eyes suspiciously. You're nervous. I'm not nervous. You've adjusted your tie 14 times. That's fashion. That's fear. Obinna laughed helplessly. Okay, fine. Maybe slightly nervous. His younger sister smiled softly then. You love her deeply, don't you? Obinna's expression immediately softened. With everything in me. And hearing that answer, both sisters started crying again. Women in this house cry too much. Obina complained dramatically. You're emotional too. That's propaganda. The wedding venue looked breathtaking. Golden lights glowed beautifully around the massive outdoor garden while flowers decorated every corner elegantly. Nigeria's wealthy elite attended alongside company workers, close friends and family members. But what surprised many guests most was the guest list itself. Cleaners sat beside executives. Interns sat near investors. Drivers, receptionists, managers, and billionaires all celebrated together because Amara personally insisted on it. No worker in my company is beneath attending my wedding, she told planners firmly. And somehow that decision made the celebration feel more beautiful, more human. Inside the venue, employees whispered excitedly, while waiting for the ceremony to begin. Sandra from marketing leaned toward another worker nervously. I still can't believe she used to clean our floors. You insulted her every week. Sandra groaned dramatically. Please don't remind me. Nearby Mama Busy sat proudly in the front row like a queen. And for the first time in years, she truly felt seen too. When the ceremony music finally began, the entire venue fell silent instantly. Everyone turned toward the entrance. And then Amara appeared. A collective gasp swept across the crowd. She looked radiant, not because she suddenly became thinner, not because she transformed into society's impossible beauty standards, but because happiness glowed visibly from her face. Chief Okafor stood proudly beside his daughter while guiding her slowly down the aisle. As they walked together, Amara looked around emotionally. So many faces, some familiar, some unexpected. Workers who once ignored her now smiled respectfully. People who once mocked her now admired her openly. But strangely, she no longer cared about their opinions the way she once did. Because standing at the end of the aisle was the one opinion that truly mattered. Obina. The moment their eyes met, emotion filled his face instantly, and suddenly Amara remembered everything. The insults, the loneliness, the cleaning cart, the rainy night. He protected her, the first kiss in the park, every painful moment that somehow led them here. Chief Okafor leaned closer as they walked. You look happy. Amara smiled softly. I am. When they finally reached the altar, Obina looked completely speechless. Amara laughed quietly. What, you're unreal. Her cheeks warmed slightly. The pastor smiled knowingly. I think our groom may faint before the vows. The crowd laughed warmly, but throughout the ceremony, Obina barely stopped staring at her, like he still couldn't believe she chose him. And honestly, Amara felt exactly the same way about him. During the vows, emotions flooded the entire venue. Obina held her hands gently while speaking first. Before you came into my life, he said softly, I thought love was something that happened to other people. Amara's eyes immediately filled with tears. You taught me that love isn't about perfection. He smiled faintly. It's about choosing someone completely. Several guests wiped tears quietly. You changed my life, Amara. His voice cracked slightly. And I promise to spend the rest of my life protecting your heart the same way you protected mine. By the time he finished, Amara was openly crying. Then it became her turn. She took a shaky breath. For years she whispered emotionally, I thought I needed to become smaller to deserve love. Silence filled the venue instantly. But you loved me before I learned how to love myself. Obina's eyes became emotional too. You saw me when I felt invisible. Tears slid down her cheeks slowly. And every day since meeting you, she smiled softly, you've made me feel worthy exactly as I am. Even Chief Okafor quietly wiped his eyes nearby. The pastor smiled warmly. Well, if nobody objects, I think we should continue before everybody starts crying permanently. Laughter spread through the crowd. Then finally the words came. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The applause exploded instantly, and as Obina kissed her beneath glowing lights and cheering voices, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Complete peace. The reception afterward felt magical. Music filled the air. Guests danced joyfully. Food and laughter flowed endlessly through the night. At one point, Mama Busy dragged Chief Okafor onto the dance floor while employees screamed excitedly. Even executives danced with cleaners, and somehow the barriers between people disappeared completely for one beautiful night. Later, during the reception, Obina stood quietly beside Amara, watching employees celebrate together. "You really changed this company," he said softly. Amara leaned gently against him. "No." He looked down at her. "We changed it." Obina smiled. That answer alone was why he loved her so deeply. Months later, married life settled beautifully around them. Amara officially became CEO of Okafor Global Holdings while Chief Okafor slowly retired from daily operations. Under her leadership, the company expanded internationally. Employees remained fiercely loyal because they knew something rare. Their CEO genuinely cared. Meanwhile, Obina became one of her strongest advisors, not because she handed him power unfairly, but because he earned respect naturally through intelligence, honesty, and integrity. Together, they built a company culture centered on dignity. No worker was treated as invisible anymore. No employee suffered silently. And every new staff member heard the same famous company story eventually. The CEO once worked there disguised as a cleaner. One evening after work, Amara stood inside the executive office, overlooking Lagos beside her husband. The sunset painted the city gold beautifully below them. Obina wrapped his arms gently around her waist. "You know something. What I still would have fallen for you even if you stayed a janitor forever." Amara laughed softly. "And I still would have chosen you even if you had nothing." Silence settled warmly between them. Then Amara looked out across the city, thoughtfully. Years ago, she believed happiness belonged only to beautiful people, confident people, perfect people. But she understood the truth now. Love had found her at her lowest. Not when she looked glamorous, not when people praised her, not when she stood on stages as a CEO, but when she pushed a cleaning cart through office hallways, believing nobody truly saw her. And somehow the right person did. Obina kissed her forehead gently. "You okay?" Amara smiled peacefully. "More than okay." And finally, after years of insecurity, loneliness, and pain, Amara Okafor was truly happy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel.